Hello friends, welcome to YR. Today on this channel, we regularly share the latest news and spoilers from American TV shows. So, let's get into today's important update. How Kane will outsmart Phyllis and Victor on Young and the Restless. Everyone on the December 18th episode of The Young and the Restless is plotting against Victor, against Phyllis, against Kane, against the internet. Victor knows he's the smartest person in any room, so he isn't worried. Jack is angry and motivated to strike back hard. Phyllis is suddenly popular as everyone wants to strike up an alliance with her. However, there is one weapon Kane has that none of the others do. And he's got to use it eventually. Stealing home. Phyllis, Michelle Stafford, is the world's best hacker. She stole Kane's, Billy Flynn, super, secret, all-powerful AI program from him. Yup. She stole the whole thing. Because a computer program is a tangible thing you can put in your purse, and it's not something that can be copied infinitely. Now Kane doesn't have it anymore. Like she broke into his house and took his VCR. Second-hand goods. And Phyllis handed the program over to Victor, Eric Braden. It was still a tangible thing. She didn't make a copy of it. Even though she is so smart. And now that Victor has it, Jack, Peter Bergman, is looking to get it away from him. So he can destroy it. Because that is something you can do with a computer program. Engineering school. Kane owned the program. But he didn't build the program, right? If he built it once, then he could just build it again, right? But if he didn't build it, then he hired someone else to do it. What is stopping Kane from going back to those people? Who likely has a copy of their work. Or, if they don't, they can rebuild it again. And hand it off to Kane. Again. And he can then use it to break into Newman Enterprises and do to Victor what Victor did to Kane. Phyllis should know this. Kane should know this. So what are they waiting for? How Kane will outsmart Phyllis and Victor on The Young and the Restless. Kane Ashby's return to Genoa City has never been about nostalgia or unfinished business. This time, it's about strategy. While Phyllis Summers thrives on chaos and Victor Newman believes brute force and psychological warfare always win, Kane is quietly positioning himself as the most dangerous player on the board. He isn't louder than Phyllis. He isn't more powerful than Victor. What makes Kane different is that he understands both of them better than they understand themselves, and that insight may be exactly how he outsmarts them both. At first glance, Kane appears to be walking straight into a trap. Victor has never trusted him, Phyllis has never respected him, and both see him as expendable. That assumption is their first mistake. Kane has always survived by adapting, learning, and waiting for the precise moment to strike. He doesn't confront power head-on. He lets power overextend itself. And right now, Victor and Phyllis are doing exactly that. Victor's greatest weakness has always been his belief that he is 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He controls through intimidation, favors, and fear, and for decades that formula has worked. But Victor underestimates people who don't crave control for its own sake. Kane isn't trying to be king of Genoa City. He's trying to dismantle the chessboard altogether. By letting Victor believe he's just another pawn, Kane gains access to conversations, secrets, and plans that Victor assumes are safe. Victor talks too much around people he thinks are harmless. Kane is listening to everything. Phyllis, on the other hand, is fueled by emotion and impulse. She moves fast, strikes hard, and rarely considers long-term consequences if short-term victory is within reach. Kane knows this better than anyone. He doesn't challenge Phyllis directly because he knows she thrives on confrontation. Instead, he gives her just enough rope to hang herself. Every whispered tip, every half-truth, every carefully planted suspicion pushes Phyllis to make rash decisions that expose her hand. Kane doesn't need to destroy her reputation. He just needs her to do it herself. What makes Kane especially dangerous is that he positions himself as a reluctant participant in their schemes. He plays the role of the weary man who's been burned too many times, the one who claims he just wants peace. Victor sees weakness. Phyllis sees opportunity. Neither sees the trap being built around them. Kane understands that perception is everything in Genoa City. If people think you're desperate, they stop guarding their secrets. If they think you're predictable, they stop questioning your motives. Kane is exploiting both assumptions with surgical precision. One of Kane's smartest moves is refusing to pick sides too early. Victor expects loyalty or rebellion. Phyllis expects alliance or betrayal. Kane offers neither. He stays neutral just long enough to make both of them uncomfortable. That discomfort forces mistakes. Victor tightens his grip, revealing his fear of losing control. Phyllis becomes more aggressive, exposing how much she has to hide. Kane collects those reactions like evidence, waiting for the moment when revealing the truth will cause maximum damage. There's also a deeply personal layer to Kane's strategy that neither Victor nor Phyllis fully grasps. Kane has lost before. He knows what it's like to be underestimated, manipulated, and discarded. That history has taught him patience. He's no longer chasing validation or revenge. He's focused on outcome. While Victor fights to maintain his legacy and Phyllis fights to prove she's always right, Kane fights to ensure he's never powerless again. That clarity gives him an edge they don't have. As the walls begin to close in, Victor may start sensing that something is off. He'll notice deals not going as planned, allies hesitating, information leaking in ways he can't trace. His instinct will be to double down, to intimidate harder, to force loyalty through fear. That response will only accelerate his downfall. Kane is counting on Victor reacting exactly as he always does. Predictability is Victor's undoing, and Kane knows it. Phyllis's reckoning will come differently. She'll realize too late that she's been reacting instead of controlling the narrative. By the time she understands that Kane has been guiding her choices from the shadows, the damage will already be done. Allies will question her judgment. Enemies will use her mistakes against her. And Kane will stand back, appearing shocked and disappointed, never revealing how deeply he orchestrated the chaos. In the end, Kane doesn't need to defeat Victor and Phyllis in a single dramatic showdown. He wins by letting them defeat themselves. He removes their leverage, exposes their vulnerabilities, and leaves them isolated. Genoa City has always rewarded the loudest voice and the strongest fist, but Kane is proving that intelligence, restraint, and timing can be even more lethal. The real twist isn't that Kane outsmarts Phyllis and Victor. It's that he does it without ever claiming victory. By the time they realize what happened, Kane will already be gone from the battlefield, his goals accomplished, his power secured. In a town built on betrayal and ambition, Kane Ashby may finally prove that the quietest player is the most dangerous of all. The fallout from Kane's quiet maneuvering is only beginning, and the next phase of his plan is where everything truly unravels for both Phyllis and Victor. What makes this chapter so explosive is that neither of them realizes they are no longer reacting to each other. They are reacting to Kane. Victor starts noticing subtle fractures inside Newman Enterprises. Long-trusted lieutenants hesitate before carrying out orders. Deals he believed were locked suddenly stall. Information he shared in confidence somehow finds its way back to him, twisted and incomplete, making him question his own instincts. Victor assumes Phyllis is leaking, manipulating, or deliberately provoking him. That assumption is exactly what Kane wants. By allowing Victor to believe Phyllis is the problem, Kane pushes him into a familiar pattern, retaliation before confirmation. Victor makes aggressive moves that look powerful on the surface but quietly alienate the very people he needs most. At the same time, Phyllis begins to feel the pressure closing in from all sides. Victor's suspicion hardens into hostility, and her usual ability to spin chaos into advantage starts slipping. Every time she thinks she's regained control, another unexpected complication hits. A deal collapses. A secret surfaces. Someone she trusted suddenly goes cold. Phyllis becomes convinced Victor is waging a silent war against her, and her response is pure Phyllis Summers: fight harder, strike faster, take bigger risks. Kane watches her spiral with calm precision, knowing that desperation has always been Phyllis's blind spot. Kane's brilliance lies in how he uses truth instead of lies. He doesn't fabricate scandals or plant fake evidence. He simply reveals real information at the worst possible time. A carefully timed comment here, a strategically leaked concern there, and suddenly Victor and Phyllis are exposing each other's weaknesses in public ways they can't undo. Kane understands that the truth, when released without context, can be more destructive than any lie. What neither Victor nor Phyllis anticipates is how others in Genoa City begin to respond. Allies grow tired of being collateral damage in someone else's power struggle. Long-standing loyalties start to feel like liabilities. People who once feared Victor begin to question him. People who once defended Phyllis begin to distance themselves. Kane doesn't recruit an army. He creates an environment where people choose to step away on their own. Victor's pride won't allow him to admit he misjudged Kane. Even when the evidence piles up, Victor frames Kane as insignificant, a distraction, someone not worth his attention. That arrogance costs him dearly. By the time Victor realizes Kane has been influencing outcomes behind the scenes, he's already reacting instead of controlling. For a man who built his empire on dominance, that loss of control is devastating. Phyllis's realization is more personal and more painful. She finally connects the dots and sees how Kane positioned himself as a confidant without ever fully committing. She recognizes the moments when he encouraged her instincts just enough to push her over the edge. The betrayal cuts deep because Kane never openly opposed her. He simply let her be herself. For Phyllis, that's the cruelest twist of all. The next shock comes when Kane refuses to take credit. When confronted, he doesn't gloat. He doesn't confess. He doesn't threaten. He calmly steps aside, allowing Victor and Phyllis to continue tearing at each other. His silence becomes his shield. Without proof, accusations sound paranoid. Without witnesses, truths become speculation. Kane has already won because he no longer needs to participate. As Genoa City reels from the damage, one question lingers in the background: what does Kane really want? Power? Revenge? Security? The answer may be all of it, or none of it. Kane's endgame appears less about domination and more about freedom. By neutralizing Victor and destabilizing Phyllis, he removes the two biggest forces that have historically controlled the board. What remains is a city wide open for reinvention. The real danger now is that Victor and Phyllis, cornered and humiliated, may finally realize they have a common enemy. If they compare notes, if they set aside ego long enough to see the pattern, Kane could become their next target. But even that possibility feels too late. Kane has already proven he can outthink them individually. Together, they may be stronger, but together has never been their strength. As the dust settles, Kane Ashby stands as one of the most underestimated players Genoa City has ever seen. Not because he seized power, but because he exposed how fragile power really is. And if Victor Newman and Phyllis Summers have learned anything from this ordeal, it may be the most terrifying lesson of all: the next time Kane moves, they may not see it coming at all. The final phase of Kane's strategy is where the balance of power in Genoa City quietly but permanently shifts. This isn't about one last confrontation or a shocking reveal. It's about erosion. Kane understands that empires don't always fall in flames. Sometimes they collapse because too many cracks were ignored for too long. Victor's world begins to shrink. Once feared phone calls are returned later than usual. Once unquestioned commands are met with careful wording instead of immediate action. The loyalty he built through dominance starts to feel conditional, and that terrifies him more than any open rebellion. Victor searches for the source of the instability and keeps circling back to Phyllis, convinced she poisoned the well. That fixation blinds him to the truth. Kane doesn't attack Victor directly because Victor is at his weakest when he's fighting shadows of his own making. Phyllis, meanwhile, becomes increasingly isolated. Her greatest strength has always been her ability to read people and stay 3 moves ahead emotionally. Now, she finds herself misreading rooms, misjudging intentions, and walking into situations where the outcome turns against her. She starts to sense that she's being outplayed, not by force, but by restraint. Every attempt to regain control only reinforces the narrative that she's unstable and reckless. Kane never says a word against her. He lets the city draw its own conclusions. What makes Kane's victory so devastating is how clean it is. There are no fingerprints. No explosive scandals trace back to him. No smoking gun for Victor to seize or for Phyllis to weaponize. Kane has weaponized patience. He waited while they exposed their own vulnerabilities, while their fear and pride did the heavy lifting for him. By the time either of them seriously considers Kane a threat, the window to stop him has already closed. Behind the scenes, Kane begins rebuilding his own position, not through intimidation or manipulation, but through reliability. He becomes the one person who delivers what he promises. In a town exhausted by power games, that consistency is disarming. People begin to trust him not because he demands it, but because he earns it. That trust becomes his real power, far more durable than fear or chaos. Victor senses that something fundamental has changed, but he can't articulate it. He's used to enemies declaring themselves. Kane never does. The absence of open conflict leaves Victor restless and unsteady. For the first time, brute force doesn't fix the problem. The harder Victor pushes, the smaller his circle becomes. Kane watches from a distance, knowing that Victor's greatest enemy has always been his refusal to evolve. Phyllis's breaking point comes quietly. She realizes that the city no longer reacts to her the way it used to. Her threats don't land. Her alliances feel transactional instead of loyal. The influence she once wielded so effortlessly now slips through her fingers. That realization hurts more than any public humiliation. Kane didn't take her power. He made it irrelevant. And then, just when Victor and Phyllis are at their most vulnerable, Kane does something unexpected. He steps back. He refuses new deals. He avoids the spotlight. He leaves them nothing to fight against. That absence forces them to confront the damage left behind without a clear villain to blame. In a city addicted to conflict, the lack of a visible enemy is deeply unsettling. The true genius of Kane's plan is that it doesn't end. It lingers. Victor and Phyllis may recover, regroup, and strike again, but they'll never be the same. They'll question their instincts. They'll doubt their alliances. And that doubt will slow them down forever. Kane doesn't need to stay in Genoa City to win. He's already changed it. In the end, Kane Ashby doesn't claim a throne, destroy an empire, or walk away celebrated. He does something far more powerful. He proves that Victor Newman and Phyllis Summers, the 2 most feared players in Genoa City, can be outmatched not by force, but by understanding. And that truth will haunt them long after Kane has moved on, knowing that the next time he appears, the city will never underestimate him again.